Welcome everybody to this on-demand presentation, Rapid Research, Digital Tools for Evidence-Based Grant Writing. My name is Maureen Bonnefin. I'll be your guide today as we explore these tools. Now realize this is a live recorded demo, so if there are any lags in the recording or if one of these demos kind of glitches, realize that could be happening. So a little context about why I decided to pitch this idea for GrantSummit this year. Last year, at GrantSummit, there was a presentation on utilizing data in your storytelling, and this plus a lot of recent conversations in the grant world about all of the headaches that come with researching evidence for your grant applications led me to think about the different tools that my academic clients use to speed up the research process and how this could potentially be useful to my non-academic clients as well as all of you out there who write grants. And so today we are going to be focusing on the following in these demos. We are going to be exploring new digital tools, AI tools, browser extensions, knowledge management systems that are used by academia when they are searching for evidence for their research projects. And we're going to use them for grant applications instead. We're going to identify key features and functionalities to better understand how these systems can be adapted and utilized in the grant writing process. Specifically, we are going to be looking at how they can organize and streamline the process and how they may help you overcome some challenges to acquiring the information you need to create convincing needs statements and strong program plans. So with this in mind, before we jump into the demo, I quickly wanted to talk a bit about what we will be covering in the demos and what we won't be covering. We will be covering tools for researching and knowledge management. We were not going to go into tools that help with actual writing the grants, any of those AI tools that help you with the actual grant writing process. And this is mostly due to time and also because there are a host of other trainings out there, potentially some here at GrantSummit, that show you how to use those AI tools to draft your grant proposals. So if you're interested in that, there are other trainings out there. We are going to be looking at tools that help you speed up the researching process. And since we're all already pressed for time, I'm going to focus on tools that don't require you to become a prompt master in order to get the information you need. You can just ask general questions that you would ask, say, Google, and get some really targeted searches out of these tools. And we are also going to be covering more than just AI-enabled tools because there are some really helpful non-AI tools that can get you information quickly and help streamline this process. Now, for the AI-enabled tools, I want you to remember that many of these tools are still in their infancy. They're in the first couple of years of development. Expect them to be advancing and changing in the process. And I smile right now because within the last couple of weeks as I was putting this presentation together, things have already changed on the platforms I'm going to be showing you. Also remember that AI models do not replace human judgment and decision making. They are just a tool to help you with the process. For example, one of my favorite tools, Elicit, which is my main tool for researching academic articles, uses large language models, also known as LLMs, to do a semantic search on the ironically named Semantic Scholar database. So a semantic search takes not only the keywords from your question to do its search, but it also uses the meaning behind those words to return relevant articles to your search. Then using this LLM technology, it also returns a general summary of the information that's found in those articles. And remember that this information may or may not be relevant to the actual article it's citing. Elicit does better than some other tools at this, but you still want to use your own critical thinking to understand if it's returning the right information. The cool thing about Elicit, which I'm going to show you in a bit, is that Elicit actually does also go a step down. And so you can go by article and get summaries on the actual article information to understand if you really want to dig deeper into that article and read the article in full. So what I want you to remember is that AI technology is useful to helping you screen information, but it shouldn't replace your own brain. Remember, it can hallucinate, it can provide inaccurate information, The tools I'm going to show you today are less prone to this than, say, something like ChatGPT, but they do occasionally still glitch. And so keep your critical thinking hat on. And if you find an article that you want to use as an evidence base for your grant application, to be able to cite it, to be able to quote it, you want to read through that article, one, to double check the information is correct, and two, because there may be information in that article that's not provided in the general summary of that article that's even more relevant to the program you're putting together. So again, tools are here to help you. They're not replacing the human behind the tool. So with this in mind, let's talk a bit more about what types of tools I'm going to be focusing on. I'm going to be focusing on tools that find data and evidence that's out there in academic literature. I am not going to be covering tools that find statistics, demographics, numerical data that can be found in, say, governmental or organizational reports or databases. There are a few tools I'll show you today that if you give it the right question, may return this information. I'm not going to quite go into that today. You can play around with it by yourself. But if you're really interested in understanding using data to present your case, there was a really great presentation at last GrantSummit in 2023 on informational storytelling, accessing and analyzing data for compelling proposals. And I highly recommend you go view that. It's still out there in grant school, at least as of 2024. Okay, before we jump into the demos, I want to invite you to contribute to this conversation. I'm going to put a Google Sheet out on the conference platform. And if you have a tool that you like to use that I'm not presenting today, I invite you to add it to our spreadsheet so we can share it with the community. If you have any questions or items that you want me to cover in the Q&A session we are going to do during GrantSummit, I have my email here. You can email me or you can put it on the conference platform, and I will try to address that question or thought during the Q&A session. That being said, I'm as new to this, well, 1 year into this as you guys are. So I just want to have an open conversation when we get to the Q&A. I'm also open to any other contacts. So if you have any grant questions for me, feel free to reach out. I work not only with academic organizations, but nonprofits, individuals, government entities, anybody who wants to work in the grant world. So open to conversations. Okay, moving on to the demos. In order to understand the tools I've decided to focus on, I want to quickly describe the types of evidence I'm thinking about when I'm using these tools. And the first type of evidence is providing some context, some evidence from academic experts to establish a need for your program. And the second is providing evidence that the proposed programming, the actual project you're doing, is using methods that have been shown to be successful in academic studies. And there's a lot more government agencies that are putting funding out there that have been requesting you provide this evidence that your programming works. And one way to do that is using academic studies to show it works. So there's a lot more having to do our research before we put together our grant applications, which is why we are here. Now, in order to show you these demos, I want to have a specific program in mind. So here is the sample program we're going to be using for our tools. And it is an after-school mentoring program for underserved youth in rural Idaho. Working with the community, we've identified some initial challenges, unrealistic expectations between the mentors and mentees about what's going to come out of this mentoring relationship, communication barriers, poor mentor-mentee matching, resistance to participation by the mentees, skepticism and trust issues from the mentees and their parents. And working with the community, we came together to figure out, well, if we potentially provide training to these mentors, maybe we can help them overcome the hurdles that they're facing in building these relationships with their mentees. And so as we go through these tools, we are going to be looking for evidence to back up the challenges that we are seeing and to show that potentially relationship building will in fact help us overcome these challenges. We will also be looking to see if there are any existing mentor training programs out there that could potentially be used as a model for the training we want to do with our mentors. So with that in mind, we're going to move into the different tools. I'm going to stop sharing the slides. and move into the tools. We're going to cover 7 tools today. The first 3 are non-AI tools, and the last 4 are AI tools. But these first 3 AI tools work very well in tandem with our AI tools to actually get the information we need. Now, the first tool we want to look at is Zotero. And Zotero is not a new tool. It's been out there for at least 20 years. It's an old style database that allows you to pull together all of your citable sources and house them in one location that's searchable. And the really cool thing about Zotero is if you sync it with Word or Google Docs, it can automatically create citations and bibliographies if your grant application allows that. Note you can group the citable information into different folders and keep it there. We also have the ability to cite any type of citable information, from books and journal articles to artwork to emails to podcasts. Whatever you need to cite, Zotero has a form out there that allows you to do that. Now, I'm not going to go through showing how to do this yet, because I want to show this real time how it syncs with the other tools that we're using. So the cool thing about Zotero, it may be 20 years old, but it's kept up with the time. So it's syncing with some of these cool new AI tools that we use to pull in information into the database and to export information out of the database. One thing to note about Zotero, I'm going to stop sharing here and share our website, is that it is free for the first 300 megabytes. And then after that point, it's still really cheap. I believe the max storage space, which is unlimited storage space, is still $120 a year. So you're going from free to very cheap, depending on what you need. And I may seem super enthusiastic about all these tools. I'm not getting paid to promote any of them. It's just things that I really love using. So Zotero is the first one. The next tool that I like to use that is just a browser extension is Unpaywall. And this allows you to access free downloadable academic articles that are already out there in the public sphere. I believe from what it says is it allows you to get a hold of about 52% of the articles that are out there. It's an extension that works for Google or Firefox. And when you're looking at a publisher's website, if this little green unlock button shows up, it means there's a free version you can access, which is super helpful, but it's still only 52%. So how do we get access to the other 48% that may be out there behind a paywall? And because we are not currently working for an academic institution, which I'm assuming many of us aren't, there may be some on this demo that are, but for those of us that aren't, how do we get a hold of those papers? One way is another tool that I like to use. It's ResearchGate, and this is an academic social platform where academics come to share what they're working on, share their publications, talk to each other. And the really cool thing is you don't have to actually be a current academic to use this space. Anybody with an email can jump on here and have conversations and look through the articles that are uploaded here. Note that oftentimes if you can't find an open source version of a PDF, you could potentially find it here because the researcher has uploaded it to share with their peers. Now note, oftentimes they're uploading preprints because that's what's allowed to be shared by the publishers. So it may not be the exact article that was published, but it's really close and helps you get the information anyways. Now, one thing I want to show is if you get and you find an article that doesn't have download PDF right here, you can still ask the authors if they are willing to share the article. And you can do that either by clicking the blue button that says request full text, or you can reach out and email the authors and see if they are willing to share. I'm going to say potentially 80 to 90% of academics are really willing to share their information if they can, and are open to being approached in this manner. Just let them know what you're working on, let them know how you're planning to use that information, and they're generally very helpful. Realize they're also very busy. And so if something goes into a black hole, feel free to follow up. Feel free to both email and use this button if you're not getting a response. I do find between using these two tools, Unpaywall, ResearchGate, and some of the AI tools I'm going to be showing you in a second, that you will get aiding in the majority of the papers you need to see for your sources. Okay, so with that in mind, we are going to move on to the AI tools. We're going to look at tools that help you initially identify evidence for the need of your project, as well as identify evidence that your program would work. We're then going to look at how to deepen your search to find more resources, and then how you can use tools to quickly understand articles that you find. So the first tool is one you may already know about, and that is Perplexity. I was at a GrantStation training a few months ago, and they highlighted this tool. And so it may already be one that you're using. It's one that I also like to start with. One, because it is free, at least free for the capacity that I need it to work in. You can, if you need more than 10 pro searches, pay for this tool, but I find for what I'm doing, I can do non-pro searches and it still works just fine. I use this as a tool to understand the general space of the challenges, to make sure the challenges we're seeing in the community align with the challenges others are seeing in other communities, and that people in academia are seeing as potential challenges in this space. So we're going to ask Perplexity a question. You'll notice that I went over to a new thread instead of using the initial search bar that comes up, and that is partially because I've found that Perplexity likes to time out if you just use that initial search bar. So we're going to ask Perplexity, what are some of the best methods for establishing effective mentoring relationships that promote K-12 learning in minority students? You can focus this down to academic articles, but I like to start with the web search first, and there's reasons for this. Usually, the web search is going to provide you more general context about the problem, about what's currently going on with others in other communities about this problem. It does pull in potentially already academic related articles, such as Inside Higher Ed. It also is pulling in reputable other communities that are talking about this challenge. And as we go through here, we can see that it's starting to align some of the things that it's seeing as challenges with mentoring, and solutions to our mentoring program. Building relationships is one of those things we wanted to focus on. That is something everybody's seeing out there. So it's showing an initial good confirmation that what we are seeing in our community is in fact something that's happening in other communities. So we can also limit this question down to academic articles. And I'm going to show you what happens when you do that. So if we limit it down to academic articles, this is one thing that was changing back and forth on me when I was running this demo earlier in preparation for today, is sometimes it pulls in these sources and sometimes you have to turn on Pro for it to pull in those sources. So if it's not pulling that in, go ahead and click on your Pro and it will. It is pulling from reputable databases, Semantic Scholar, like I mentioned before, that Elicit uses, and PubMed. So it's pulling from useful and known academic sources. What it's doing, however, that our general search doesn't do is it's really focusing in on very specific programs. And that may or may not be useful. So for example, it's pulled in a very specific program on the COVID-19 pandemic. Is that useful to what I want to do with my mentoring program and increasing mentor-mentee relationships? Probably not. And so, yes, it is going to provide you with some good general background in this space, but because you can't give it parameters to its search, you can't limit it by time scale, you can't limit it by academic journal, and you can't have it focus in on particular populations or keywords without a lot more prompting. This is a space that I like to use just to understand the general space, and then I move over to Elicit, which allows me to do that. But before I move to Elicit, I want to show you one more tool, and that tool is a Google AI Lab. So I want to show you a new tool before we move into Elicit, and that is in Google. We have this little beaker up in the upper right-hand corner. And these are labs, things that Google is currently working on that you can add to your search engines. And if we click into here, there's an AI overview. I have this turned on already. It's a completely free tool that provides a AI-generated summary on whatever search term you put into your browser. So one thing to note about the Google AI Labs search browser, it's using your normal search engine, search bar, and so you're not going to notice it's even on until you put a question in. The other thing about it is it does not like very specific questions. And so I'm going to show a specific question to start with and show you what happens when we put in a very specific question. So how do you overcome mentoring relationship dynamics that prohibit K-12 learning in minority students? Very specific in looking at mentoring relationship dynamics, looking for that K-12 population. If I ask Google to do a search on that, it does a normal search where it returns websites. But I don't want to spend my time reading through all the websites and figuring out if they're relevant to what I want to look at. So I'm going to ask it a more general question. And that is, how do you establish effective mentoring that promotes learning in minority students? And I do that, and then you'll see it's a little more general question. So our little Google AI Labs overview starts working, the beaker comes up, and it starts generating a summary. And you'll notice the things about this summary is it's very to the point. It usually gives you bullet points around topic points. So these are pieces that you might want to use to start prompts for your grant or to pull in information for your grant. It's also very quick and easy to read to see if we are looking at similar challenges or solutions to the ones that we want to present in our grant. And looking through here, mentor training is one of them. So we're seeing similar information. We're also seeing that it's pulling in reputable sources, just like Perplexity, Inside Higher Ed, others out there that are working in this space, NCBI, National Institutes of Health, so other reputable websites and journals. One pretty cool thing about Google, and it's hit or miss depending on the website that it returns and how that website functions with the Google AI. If you click into that website, it will highlight where it's pulling the information it generated the summary from. So this is really cool because it's already doing the search function for you to see where it's pulling this information, and you can read through what caused it to generate the information you're looking at, which you may be able to use as more in-depth information for your grant. Okay. Now that we've seen how we can understand the space in general and start our search down the evidence research path, we can move over to my favorite tool, which is Elicit. So far, we've been looking at mostly free tools. Elicit, unfortunately, you do have to pay for, but it's really good at providing you like an initial free version And that free version gives you so many tokens. I found those tokens lasted me 5 to 6 months of searching. And then I had to go ahead and pay for the full version. And that is still very cheap. It's still only $120 a year, $10 a month. So if you're looking for a very robust tool, if you like what you're seeing here, you might consider playing around with it a bit more and deciding if you can afford that in your budget. So Elicit, when you first pull it up, is going to look like this. And you can ask it that same question that we asked Perplexity. And we will see that it returns a similar-ish general search with a lot of articles underneath with summaries of those articles. So give it a little while to go ahead and run its thing. You'll see it's giving you a general kind of academic sounding summary with citations right in line. Like I was saying, double check those citations actually match up to the sentence if you're planning to use this sentence as a prompt in your grant. Because while it's really good, it's still not potential. I've still found that it occasionally miscites a few things. So double check those. Now, while I do like the general summary, I like this chart that's below it even more, because this is going to pull in 16 initial articles that relate to the question that you've asked it. And you'll note that it was asking, put in a research question. You can ask it any question. It's going to work, whether it's a research question or not. And it's going to pull relevant articles on that question. It's going to pull in the information on the article. It's going to pull in a summary of the abstract, which helps you really quickly see, is this relevant to what I want to do? And the other cool thing is you can start adding in even more information about this article using add columns over here. So I like to add in main findings. That gives me a bit more context about the study. And I also, especially in cases like the one we're using today, where we want to be looking at a particular population, K-12 minority students, I want to come down to another column, which is population characteristics, and add that in. I want you to go ahead and play around with these columns. There's a lot of information you can pull out of here. Some of it's relevant to what we do in program work, and some of it's more relevant to what happens in research work. But it may or may not help you screen articles quickly to decide if you want to use it as a source. So if we look through those new added columns, we can see we're pulling in some relevant information around underrepresented students, about mentoring relationships. Weirdly, it's pulling in something from Israel about a program over there. May not be relevant to this program we're trying to develop in North America and Idaho. You'll notice sometimes it pulls in abstracts that don't mention your characteristics of your population or don't mention a finding. And so it's a good initial search, but what happens if we want to go even more focused? We want to move this quicker, this search more focused, make it quicker. There's a filter component to this. So this works much like your older databases where you can start screening down parameters and really hone in on information you want. So it's combining that cool semantic search, the meaning behind the word, and our old style database searches. So I like to limit my publications back to last 5 to 15 years, depending on how big this field is, this question is. I'm going to increase my journal quality to Q3s and above, just to kind of screen out the kind of less reputable journals. You can, if you're working in an actual research study, screen down by study type, or if you know for your program that you want a particular type of information, you can screen down by study type, but I don't use it as often as I might. And the other cool thing is you can search by specific keywords and have it focus in really nicely on a particular piece of information that you want. Even more importantly, in our case, for this particular example, it can screen out words. So I don't want to hear about anything that's doing studies that are dealing with college students. And so I'm going to screen out undergraduates. And can I spell today? No, I can't. So we'll go ahead and add that in. And we don't want to hear about graduates. graduate students. So we've added in our parameters. We're going to go back up, apply the parameters, and it's going to update the search based on those new parameters. You'll notice it pulled in the same first article, but if we start going down, it's pulling in even more relevant studies and publications. So we're seeing more K-12 studies, more relationship building studies. So it's getting in there and really focusing on the information we want it to focus on. Now let's take a look at one of these particular articles and see what all information you can actually get out of this database. So if we click in on the article, it's going to pull in the actual abstract, and you could read that abstract right here. It's also pulling in all of that AI generated information on the left-hand side. If you want to, you can go click out to the actual Semantic Scholar database and see, say, any relevant information in that database about this. So if you need to cite this, it's out here. You can see who cited it, the types of references it has, all that information real quickly in Semantic Scholar. You can also, as long as the PDF is publicly available and Elicit was able to access it, go directly to the PDF. And then you can go ahead and start reading it right here. Or what I like to do is at this point, I'm going to upload this to my Zotero database so I can house all of my citations in one location and come back and access those as I'm writing my grant. So to do that, there is a Zotero extension I've enabled on my Chrome. I scroll down, I see that Zotero has a PDF that it can add to the database. You click on that, it's going to pull up the connector. And then in order to add it to the database, you have to click the down arrow button, click done. Well, find the folder you want to save it in first. Luckily, I've already got that one up for GPA presentation. Click done. Now I'm going to stop sharing the search browser engines here, the websites, go back to Zotero, and you'll see that it is automatically pulled in all of the citable information for this article. So no need to manually enter any information about this article into your database. It's already there. And then when you go to build an automatic bibliography using Word or Google Doc and your Zotero connector there, all that information will be right there. You don't have to manually enter any citations or bibliography information. I'm going to say this works most of the time. Occasionally you do have to enter your own information, but this greatly speeds everything up. You also notice that it pulled in the actual PDF of the article, and that if you click in on that, you can make your own notes, highlights, whatever you need to do to read through this. And if it has some really interesting information that you want to save and highlight for your article, you can quickly note that and then pull it over to whatever tool you're using to write your grant. And then next time you come out here to use that, it's right there. You can also drag and drop this into any other folder so that it can be used across multiple different folders that you're using to access information for your different grants or your different work that you're working on. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this again, and let's go back to Elicit. Back here in Elicit, we're going to go back to that initial search or notebook that we had. And I want to show you another article. So if we click in on that first article, again, you're getting the abstract, you're getting Semantic Scholar, and again, you have a PDF you can actually access. So if we come in here and access this and try and do the same thing over here to this Zotero, unfortunately, you see PDF is not popping up. And this occasionally happens. I noticed it happening when one of the big publishers updates their databases and then Zotero hasn't quite done their patch, that it's not going to pull in the actual PDF to Zotero. It says no open access PDF. But the thing is you can still add it to your Zotero database And again, I'm going to go back to Zotero real quick, and it will pull in all of the information on that publication. It just didn't pull in the PDF. And so what you would need to do if you want that PDF is go ahead and download it out of the website, upload it to Zotero just by add attachment, attach link to file. You can try to find the PDF here, but if you're not able to see it through the Zotero connector, it most likely will not pull in through find PDF here. See, didn't find it there. But you can see how you could potentially make this a bit more streamlined, even if you have to do minor manual patches on it. Okay, back again to Elicit. Let's go back to the notebook. You will notice occasionally you don't get a PDF, in which case you could potentially come out here, go to Semantic Scholar, go view on Sage, and see, decline all. See if Unpaywall had a copy, and they don't. So what we would do in that case is come through, copy the title, come over to Grant, ResearchGate, see if there is a copy of the article in ResearchGate. There isn't, and so in this case, this would be one where I would email the author or request via ResearchGate if I can get a copy of that publication. Okay. So what happens if 16 articles isn't enough for your evidence base, or if it's not returning as much information as you want, or you want to go into a bit more information on those relationship pieces? One, you can use Elicit to deepen the search by clicking in on the articles that are relevant to the evidence that you want to provide in your grant, and then clicking up at the top of the chart, show more like these, and it'll pull in another 16 articles that are related to the articles that you just clicked on. Now, if you wanted to use this as like the first initial screening database for all the information you're collecting, you can also come through and delete out pieces that aren't relevant. So this is a very clean source of information for you as you're going through and quickly screening in and out articles that you want to use for your grant. So you can see you're starting to pull in a lot more information on Hispanic students, mentoring them, coming down, natural mentors, racial identity, how to overcome those barriers. So you're just building out really quickly, like you can get 5 to 20 sources in less than an hour that you can screen through and build out your citable sources for your grant. Now, what happens if either for some reason Elicit is not providing you the information you want, or you don't have access to Elicit because you can't, your budget doesn't allow it? There's another tool that I like to use for deepening your search. However, you do need to have articles already selected in order to build out your search. And this tool is Research Rabbit. It's another completely free tool. You either need to pull in articles from Perplexity or from Elicit or from wherever you're pulling your information. Have 3 to 5 to more, depending on how deep you want to go in your search, articles ready to add to Research Rabbit. You can click on Add Papers, and I'm going to go ahead and import from my Zotero. And it's going to add in those papers that we just found over an Elicit and uploaded to Zotero. And then using one of these initial papers, you click on it, it pulls up that paper and the abstract from that paper. But what you're really looking for is the column all the way to the right, which shows you more articles based on, say, articles these authors have written, articles related authors have written, similar work, but who the heck has time to go through 1,500 articles? And then what I really like to look at is everything that cited this article and everything that this article has referenced. So I usually start with cited because those are more recent publications. And you click on that, it's going to pull up everything that cited this article. You can scroll through and see them all here. Or what I prefer to do is look at this network map. Everything that's closer to that initial green article was probably more relevant to your grant application. Everything that's further away may be less relevant. You can also look at this in a timeline manner if you're looking for more recent articles to add to your sources. I want to look at some specific articles here. So let's see. Thanks, Hagler. There it is. Flanagan, I want to look at. You can see if you're looking at Flanagan that it pulls up that abstract. You can click directly into the publisher's website and the article. You can see that right there. You can also go directly to the PDF if you want to. Now, one thing I want to note, this one's going to go straight back to that publisher's website. And that is because if we scroll down, we're going to need to pay to access this PDF. So again, we could plop this into ResearchGate to see if we can get a copy over there. And we'll notice potentially the reason that we can't get a copy of this is that this is a book article, book chapter. And so oftentimes book chapters are harder to get because of intellectual property agreements that you have to sign to publish that book. And so you may actually, if you want to use this information, have to pay for it, or you can do a deeper search and find something else that's relevant that you don't have to pay for, which is usually what I do. So let's take a look at a different publication that Research Rabbit found. And this is an article by Prince. Again, we can click out to the publisher's website, and you'll notice on this one, give it a second, that my unpaywall extension just popped up and is working. And it says that there's a free downloadable version of this out on the website. So if you can't quickly see that there's a full text article right here, when you come to the publisher's website, you can see unpaywall says, hey, you can click out and find this PDF. So here it is. And that's the PDF we can go ahead and download to Zotero. Now, because we don't get a full summary like we do in Elicit via Research Rabbit, and I don't really want to read these 18 pages of this article to see if it's relevant to what I want to put into my grant application. Yes, I could read the abstract and make some inferences from there, but I want to show you a few different tools that will help you more quickly actually create a summary that you can comprehend and then decide if you want to use this as a source or not. Now, the first one is back to Elicit. So if you have paid for Elicit, Elicit has the capability of providing you with summaries on uploaded PDFs. Now, it also has the ability, you can either upload the paper or you can import from Zotero. So if you're housing everything out in Zotero, this interface between downloading things into Zotero and then uploading it back to your tools, it's going to just make everything just a little bit quicker. You'll notice that it does take a little bit of time to do the actual upload, just like any upload is going to take. But give it a second and it will pull those pieces in. So here we are. We've got the new Prince published article. You would think you'd be able to do something just by clicking on it, but really all that does is allow you to tag or delete or filter this thing. So instead of doing that, we need to go back to the notebook we just were working in. So we keep all the information about this grant in one notebook. And while it uploads everything, we want to go down and add a new step. So we can go ahead and extract data from an uploaded paper. We go to that Prince article. We're going to have to scroll down, go forward on that, and it's going to do its little processing thing on the Prince article. Now, the annoying thing with Elicit is it hasn't yet learned to remember the preset you gave in the original chart, and all it's going to do is provide you the general information about this article. So in order to see the same things that we saw from the search it did for this particular article we uploaded, you need to add the summary, you need to add the main findings, and we need to scroll down and add in the population characteristics. So you can quickly come through and understand a bit more about this paper. We're seeing potentially this doesn't actually relate to the grant we want to write. It is talking a bit about mediating relationships, so maybe there's something there we want to dig into further, but maybe not. So if this isn't enough, if this isn't giving you the information you need, or if you aren't paying for Elicit, I'm going to move on to our last AI tool, and that is ChatGPT. The new free versions of ChatGPT has the ability to use pre-developed GPTs, and GPTs are just programming for AIs for how to do searches. The pre-developed GPT you want is Scholar GPT. You find it by going to Explore GPTs. And like I said, you don't need to be a prompt master to do any of this. So I'm going to use a pre-programmed prompt in Scholar GPT to provide it with a paper and have GPT analyze it. I'm going to click that. It's going to hopefully say, sure, I'll do this. Last night it didn't. And then once it says, yes, I'm able to do this, go ahead and upload that document from your files. So this is where you need to know that where Zotero is saving its PDF. So you can go get that information, get that PDF. I'm going to upload this PDF. Now, remember, anything you put into ChatGPT has the potential to have training done on it by its tool, by its GPT algorithm. And so either you need to go out into your settings and say, don't train on the data I'm providing, or only upload things to ChatGPT that are already out there in the public space. Elicit, I trust a bit more because it explicitly says in its facts that it does not train its algorithm on anything you upload. So I usually default to Elicit because it's not doing any training on my data. Once you have everything uploaded here, go ahead and click Start the Analyzation Process, and it will go ahead and start doing that for you. And you'll notice that it's providing a very coherent general summary of the article that once again reconfirms that this is probably not an article that I want to use as a source of evidence for the grant application I'm writing. It just doesn't have enough about mentoring. The relationship building pieces it's talking about here are not quite what we would want to be seeing in the mentoring space. And so while we may keep this article for a future grant we're writing and I would move it out of the current folder I have it in Zotero to a different folder. That way it's not pulling in as something I'm looking for when I write my grant. With that in mind, there's a few key takeaways I want you to think about before our Q&A session at GrantSummit. So before our Q&A session at GrantSummit, I want you to go out and use these different tools. Play around with them, see what's working for you, see what's not working for you. and then come to the session with questions, with cool features you found that I didn't highlight. Remember, I'm not an expert on these. I've been using them for about a year. Many of these tools have only been around for a couple of years, so nobody's quite an expert on them. But I do want to address whatever questions we can at the Q&A session and have an open conversation about what everybody is actually using as research tools and what's working for you. And so if you have a tool that you love to use that I did not highlight today, again, please go out and put that into the Google Sheet on the conference platform. That way we can share all of these different tools with the community. And as a final takeaway, my hope is that by using some combination of either the tools I presented today or tools that you like to use or a combination of both, that you will be able to increase the speed at which you do your research for evidence for your need or case statements, or to provide evidence that their methods you're using for your programming have been successful in academic cases. And that this is going to help you pull together all the sources you need to give yourself writing prompts for your grant, or to give yourself citations to show that the information you're providing in the grant is reputable. And it's just going to help you quickly, within, say, an hour, get as many sources as you need to do this, whereas it would have taken us days or hours before to do the same type of thing. So again, thank you for viewing this pre-recorded presentation, and I look forward to meeting you all at the Q&A on Friday during Grant Summit. See you then.